Charlie Chaplin sits on the park bench in Kennington Common, nervously adjusting his collar while 16-year-old Violet Henderson moves closer, her eyes sparkling with the kind of admiration he's never seen directed at him personally. As she leans in for what will be his first kiss, she whispers breathlessly, "Charlie, you're becoming so famous. Everyone at the theater talks about you constantly." What unfolds during the next 23 minutes of their awkward romantic encounter doesn't just mark Charlie's introduction to love. It reveals how early fame complicates authentic human connection, teaching him that when people fall for your public persona rather than your private self, even the most intimate moments can feel strangely performative. Kennington Common, South London, April 14, 1905, Sunday afternoon, 3:20. The spring air carries the sounds of children playing and couples strolling through the modest park that serves as a social gathering place for working-class families in South London. Charlie, at 16, has been performing regularly with various music hall companies for 8 months, earning enough recognition in local theater circles that people sometimes recognize him on the street. Violet, the daughter of a seamstress who works near the Canterbury Music Hall, has been attending Charlie's performances for weeks. Unlike other girls her age who giggle and whisper about young men, Violet possesses a directness that both attracts and intimidates Charlie. She approached him after last night's show with an invitation to meet her at the park for a proper conversation. Charlie arrived early, spending 20 minutes rehearsing potential conversation topics and wondering if his one decent shirt looks respectable enough for what feels like his first real romantic encounter. His experience with girls extends mostly to brief exchanges with fellow performers, nothing approaching the sustained personal attention that Violet seems to offer. "Charlie," Violet says, smoothing her Sunday dress as she settles beside him on the bench, "I've been watching your performances, and you're different from other comedians. More sophisticated." Charlie feels simultaneously flattered and confused. "Sophisticated? I mostly just make faces and fall down a lot." "No, it's more than that. You make people feel things while they're laughing. That's special. That's why you're going to be famous beyond just our little theaters." The word, famous, creates an odd sensation in Charlie's chest. He's dreamed of success, but hearing someone else predict it makes the possibility seem both thrilling and strangely threatening. "Violet, I appreciate your confidence, but I'm just learning my craft. I'm nowhere near famous, but you will be. I can tell, and I wanted to know you before everyone else discovers you." Charlie realizes that Violet's interest isn't entirely personal. She's attracted to his potential future as much as his current self. This insight feels simultaneously flattering and disappointing, though he lacks the emotional vocabulary to fully understand why. "What do you see in me, specifically?" Charlie asks, genuinely curious about her perspective. "You have this way of looking at the world that's both sad and funny at the same time. When you perform, it's like you understand something about life that other people miss. That's going to make you special." Charlie recognizes that Violet is describing his artistic approach accurately, but he wonders if she's interested in him as a person or as a representative of artistic talent she finds appealing. As they continue talking, Charlie notices that Violet frequently mentions his performances, his growing reputation, his potential for greater success. Even her compliments about his personality tend to connect back to his theatrical work rather than emerging from observation of how he behaves in private moments. "Charlie," Violet says, moving closer on the bench, Would you like to kiss me?" The directness of her question catches Charlie completely off guard. His limited romantic experience hasn't prepared him for such straightforward communication, and he finds himself both excited and nervous about the prospect. Yes, I think I would," Charlie responds, surprised by his own honesty. As Violet leans toward him, Charlie experiences his first adult romantic moment. But instead of the purely emotional connection he expected, the kiss carries undertones of performance and public persona that make it feel less spontaneous than he anticipated. "That was lovely," Violet murmurs, still close enough that he can smell her lavender soap. "My friends are going to be so jealous that I kissed Charlie Chaplin." The comment hits Charlie like a small physical blow. Instead of expressing personal emotion about their shared moment, Violet immediately contextualizes it in terms of his public identity and her social standing among peers. "Violet," Charlie says carefully, "when you think about that kiss, what matters to you about it?" "What do you mean? Are you happy because you enjoyed kissing me personally, or because you kissed someone who's becoming known in local theater?" Violet looks genuinely puzzled by the distinction. "Both, I suppose. Aren't they the same thing?" Charlie realizes that for Violet, his identity as a person and his identity as a performer have become inseparable. She can't separate her attraction to Charlie the individual from her fascination with Charlie the emerging entertainer. This confusion isn't entirely Violet's fault. Charlie himself hasn't yet learned to maintain clear boundaries between his public and private selves. When you spend most of your time developing a stage persona, the line between authentic and performed behavior becomes increasingly blurred. "Charlie," Violet continues, "I've been thinking that when you become really successful, we could be a proper couple. People would talk about us together. Wouldn't that be exciting?" The comment reveals that Violet views their potential relationship partly as an opportunity to participate in Charlie's anticipated fame. She's not just interested in being his girlfriend. She's interested in being the girlfriend of someone important. Charlie feels a complex mixture of disappointment and understanding. Violet isn't manipulative or insincere. She simply can't distinguish between attraction to a person and attraction to what that person represents publicly. "Violet, what if I never become famous? What if I remain just a local music hall performer for my entire career? Would you still want to be with me?" Violet hesitates before answering, and her pause reveals more than any words could. She hasn't considered the possibility of loving someone independent of their public achievements or potential. Well, I suppose I would. But Charlie, you're too talented to stay local. Everyone can see that." Charlie realizes that Violet's attraction depends partly on assumptions about his future success that may not materialize. She's fallen in love with his potential rather than his present reality. As their afternoon continues, Charlie makes several observations that will shape his approach to romantic relationships throughout his life. First, he understands that early fame, even at a local level, attracts attention that isn't entirely personal. People become interested in you partly because of what association with you might provide for them: status, excitement, reflected glory. Second, he recognizes that maintaining authentic relationships requires protecting certain aspects of yourself from public identity. If everything about you becomes performance-related, intimate connections become contaminated by professional considerations. Third, he learns that genuine romantic love requires someone who can see you clearly as an individual, independent of your achievements or public recognition. "Violet," Charlie says as they prepare to part ways, "I've enjoyed spending time with you, and I'm grateful for your enthusiasm about my work. But I think we might want different things from a relationship." "What do you mean?" "I think you're attracted to the idea of being with someone who might become successful in theater. I need someone who would care about me even if I never achieved anything publicly significant." Violet looks hurt and confused. "But Charlie, your talent is part of who you are. How can I separate that from my feelings about you? I'm not asking you to ignore my work. I'm asking whether your feelings for me would exist if I were just Charles Chaplin the shop clerk or Charles Chaplin the office worker." Violet's honest answer comes through her inability to answer at all. They part amicably, with Violet promising to continue attending his performances and Charlie promising to remember their afternoon fondly. But Charlie walks home with a new understanding about how public recognition affects private relationships. The experience teaches him that he needs to be careful about revealing which aspects of attention are genuinely personal and which are connected to his growing reputation. More importantly, he learns to value people who demonstrate interest in his thoughts, feelings, and character rather than just his professional achievements. 3 weeks later, Charlie meets Eleanor, a girl who works at a local bakery and knows nothing about theater. When they have conversations, she asks about his family, his opinions, his hopes unrelated to entertainment. When they share their first kiss, she doesn't mention his name or reputation at all. The contrast helps Charlie understand what authentic romantic connection feels like. It involves someone caring about who you are when you're not performing, not who you might become if your performances succeed. Years later, when Charlie becomes internationally famous and faces much more complex challenges in forming genuine relationships, he often returns to the lesson Violet taught him, that loving someone means loving them independent of their public identity. The most dangerous thing about early success, Charlie reflects in a 1950 interview, is that it teaches you to confuse attention with affection, recognition with love. Young performers often struggle to find authentic relationships because they've learned to evaluate their own worth based on public response. The 23 minutes he spent with Violet in Kennington Common taught him that genuine intimacy requires protecting certain aspects of yourself from public consumption, and that the people worth loving are those who fall for your private self rather than your public persona. The park bench where they shared that awkward first kiss was removed during urban renovation in 1962. But Charlie kept the lesson throughout his life, that true love can only exist when someone sees past your achievements to appreciate who you are when the spotlight dims.